Okay, welcome everybody to this week's call. My name is Jackie Boyle and I live in Australia. And we have no other than Dr. Joseph Ahrens on the call. It is his call and he always brings a wealth of knowledge to us each and every week. But this week especially I'm very excited about because it is talking about inflammation. And we're also going to be talking about the benefits of flavonoids. We are not talking about any products. We're not aiming to heal, cure, or mitigate any diseases at all. But so if you do have any questions, please do not ask specific product questions because we will not be answering them. This topic is talking about inflammation. What is it? How does it impact the body? What can we do to help ourselves when our inflammatory levels increase? And so forth. So first and foremost, Dr. Ahrens, how are you?
I'm doing great. You know, I just took this shot here just about 15 minutes ago. We're sunset here in the Bahamas and it is about 30 degrees today. I'm sorry, Jackie, 30 degrees. That means for people in Fahrenheit about 86 degrees, 30 degrees Celsius. So yeah, it's a little warm here.
I am a little bit jealous, I have to say, but you know, I guess so. Even though when the rain shines, there's always a rainbow somewhere, isn't there? So you just still got to keep searching for the positive. So Dr. Ahrens, let's get started, I think, with inflammation, because I think it is a condition or it's something that is evident that each and every one of us have at some point in time in our life. So if you can tell us, if you wouldn't mind sharing, what is inflammation and what are the different two key types of inflammation that our body can experience and when?
I'm really glad to. You know, inflammation is seen as a bad boy in health, but actually inflammation is required for our good health. Inflammation is part of the body's response to attack and it's part of the healing process. A long time ago, you know, like 500 years ago, when people started trying to figure out what was going on, when you got some problem, either an insect bite or poisoned or cut, the body got hot and it got red. And they said, wow, that looks like it's on fire. And that's actually what inflammation means, just like flammable products. It's like your body's on fire. The temperature of your body will go up several degrees higher and it gets real red. Well, the reason for that is whatever happened to your body is going into a wound response. Whether that wound comes from a cut, an insect bite, a broken bone, even a poison, it sends in a lot of blood to that area. The capillaries expand, and that's what causes the redness. Also, due to the extra blood flow in that area, it brings more heat to that area. That heat is not a response directly from this attack. It's just because you have a lot more blood flow in that area. The reason your body does that, two things. If it's something like a poison, it's trying to dilute that poison out of your body and eliminate it. And it's also bringing to you all those chemicals that you need, those natural molecules to the wound site that repair that wound. And it starts out by getting rid of the debris and the poison, and then it starts building scaffolding and then makes new tissue on top of that. And that first stage in there in this wound healing is the inflammation. We need it. We need inflammation. That's called acute inflammation. Now, I don't mean it's like a little baby inflammation and it's so cute to take a picture. I mean acute, A-C-U-T-E. It means all at once, sharp, at one time, at a small piece of time, acute. The problem is the other type of inflammation, which is chronic, and that chronic means, like chronology, it means time. Inflammation that goes on for a long time. That stuff will literally kill you. And so we have acute inflammation and we have the chronic inflammation. And so let's say you had a poison in you and you kept getting poisoned little by little. You always were poisoned. Your body would start that inflammation process, but then it would never stop. It goes on and on. That's chronic inflammation. So that acute inflammation turns into the chronic inflammation. And after a while, your body doesn't just try to repair whatever it's looking to solve, it actually starts chewing on your own body. It turns into an autoimmune response. And so things like psoriasis are due to a chronic inflammation, which turns into an autoimmune response, which means your body is automatically on yourself starting to attack you instead of the original damage or the original insult. So those are the two types of inflammation. We need acute inflammation. We do not want the chronic long-term inflammation. So, you know, there was I don't know, half a year ago, I did one of these talks on inflammation. And so I recommend people go back and look at that one. I went through all of the immune response, including inflammation, where it came from, which cells produced all these chemicals. If you want to dive deep into that, go back and look at that. But for right now, the recap is there is acute inflammation, which is good. It helps our body heal. There's chronic inflammation, which means something is wrong. You're continually being poisoned, or your body continues to attack you. It doesn't quit. And that will lead us into flavonoids.
So, Dr. Ahrens, before you jump, can I interrupt you? Is that okay?
You can interrupt, but you can interrupt, but I was wanting to ask you, is that clear?
Oh, sorry. It is very clear, yes. But what I wanted to ask you, can you please clarify the itis? So when we talk about itis, when we get all of these conditions that are associated and they have itis on the end of it, what does itis mean in medical terminology for people to understand, and what's the link to inflammation?
Well, in Greek, itis is inflammation. So you have arthritis, arthritis. Arthur, it means joint. And itis is inflammation. So arthritis is inflammation of the joint. So dermatitis, it means derm, it means the word for skin, itis, inflammation of the skin. So anytime you have itis in there, that's inflammation. And it's usually the chronic inflammation is the problem, because you can get, if you damage your knee and then your body comes in to repair itself, it goes into inflammation, it gets swollen, gets red, gets warm. And if everything's working perfectly, then it goes away and your body is healed. But when you have that long-term chronic inflammation in your joint, that's what arthritis is. So we can have a short-term inflammation of your joint, or a chronic long-term inflammation of your joint. Usually when you're talking about the chronic long-term, that's when you describe something like arthritis. So you go in, you've got a rash on your face, and the doctor says, oh, well, that's dermatitis. And then he'll give you some drugs in order to help reduce that inflammation, because your body is not being able to reduce it by itself. He knows there's something wrong. He knows you've got chronic inflammation. Let's add some drugs in there to reduce that issue. So that's itis, is inflammation. Anytime you see itis behind there, it means inflammation of whether it's skin, or you can have inflammation everywhere. That's another important point. It's not just what you see on the surface. Of course, that's where we originally noticed it. See it on the surface, it looks red, it's hot, but you can have actually that inflammation anywhere in your body. You can have nephritis. That's inflammation of the kidneys. You could have liver inflammation, all types of inflammation, but you can't see them inside. You can have inflammation of the entire vessels inside your body. Your arteries can be inflamed. Your heart, carditis, you heard that, inflammation of the heart. And you can't see that, but still that reaction is still there. And we have several ways to test that. One of them is when you get into inflammation, you produce a lot of these natural chemicals that get into your body. There's a few of them that we know, like C-reactive protein. Maybe people have heard of that. Or TNF alpha, tumor necrosis factor alpha. These are natural molecules that are released during that inflammation process. And so we check your blood, and that's how you can tell, oh, you've got some inflammation going on in your body. It just wasn't on the outside of your elbow or something. It's something inside. It could be your liver, your stomach, your intestines, your lungs, your brain. Anything can be inflamed.
Dr. Ahrens, I do want to say, I wanted to address that because quite often a lot of the questions we get asked has an itis at the end of it. So I think that's made it very, very clear for people to understand itis equals there's an inflammatory condition there. So what I wanted to ask you, I do want to say I actually got dressed and I've got inflammation all over me with my orange too. So this is for inflammation today. Clothing, see? Itis. What I wanted to ask you too is what are the triggers? Like, what are we looking at that potentially could trigger inflammation so that people can understand, if you'd like to share some information in your opinion?
Well, if we're talking about, okay, the two types, I'll get rid of the first one right away. Acute inflammation, that's like any type of injury whatsoever. Broken bone, bee sting, cut, twisted knee, twisted ankle, your ankle swells up, it gets hot, but heals and goes away. It's from an injury that usually you can identify. The other one, chronic inflammation. Wow, that's a booger. That's usually by some long-term exposure to some chemical, natural or not, that your body just can't get rid of. And sometimes we do this to ourselves. Okay, the number one I want to talk about is refined sugar. Refined sugar, what's that? I think hopefully everybody on this call knows it, but I remind everybody that's refined sugar. It is table sugar. It's also donuts. It's wheat bread, even white bread, wheat bread. It's the rice, potatoes. When you have this refined sugar in your body, your brain, your chemistry of your body thinks it's a poison, and it is. And you constantly have this poison circulating in your body, and you'll get chronic inflammation everywhere, and you don't get rid of it. You eat rice every day. So, well, you can understand that table sugar is refined cane or beet sugar, and it's the really nice fluffy white stuff, but it's just as much refined in today's like rice products, and potatoes, which are just almost 100% sugar. They're starch, but starch breaks down immediately into sugar. As soon as it gets onto your tongue, it turns into just like table sugar. It's a combination of, it's just glucose, the same stuff you in a hospital that they stick in you to help you out. It's just glucose. But if you have pure glucose going throughout your body for an extended period of time, your body says, wow, this is a poison. It's a poison. It reacts to it just like it's a poison. So it sends out all these little soldiers in your bloodstream to fight this poison. It never turns off, of course. And day by day, you're having more and more of it. You go into chronic inflammation, and that leads to eventually your own body's tissue breakdown. So that's really the number one source of chronic inflammation, is that continual supply of this refined sugar into your body. We were never meant to consume that refined sugar as an animal. I mean, we took sugar in fruit, which, by the way, we'll get to in just a moment, I know, which also contain flavonoids, and in not just fruit, but rice, wild rice. Okay, that's fairly good for you. But we have this white rice that's just nothing but starch, nothing but sugar. Potatoes that we eat today, and that, unless there's something like a sweet potato, or these purple potatoes, you've many colored potatoes. If they're just these regular white potatoes, man, they're just sugar, and you eat them, and you have chronic inflammation. So those are the couple of primary things. But you could also be subject to pollution. Who can avoid that in this day and age? Automobile exhaust, and living in cities. That is also a long-term exposure to poison that your body just cannot stay ahead of. And so your body goes into chronic inflammation. A lot of the electronic emissions also, they don't kill us. They don't appear to hurt us, but we know that they can, after time, just wear out your body, and your body goes into a chronic inflammation.
So Dr. Ahrens, I want to touch on this area, because we are just talking about there's no products being mentioned here. But if we look at rice, and because rice is one of the most consumed food sources, especially when we go into certain particular countries, because it's cheap and it feeds many mouths as well. But rice actually has been connected, when you look at in the Asian countries, they have one of the highest rates of diabetes. And why is that? Like, so people understand when we start talking about flavonoids, but we are specifically talking about inflammation and those refined sugars, which are actual carbohydrates. Why is it that rice has such an impact on people when we're talking about in those Asian countries, and there's such a high level of diabetes? Do you want to just explain that specifically for people?
Today's modern rice varieties are 90% starch. And starch is nothing more than sugar molecules, glucose, hooked together in a long chain. Gone is the time when we ate things like wild rice. Even when you go out and you buy so-called wild rice, it's really not the wild rice that we ate 500 years ago. It's still a modern rice variety that is nothing more than sugar. I will say the same thing with just eating a lot of potatoes. And also look at cassava. So cassava is the third most consumed carbohydrate in the world, out throughout Brazil and Africa. Cassava is their carbohydrate where they get their fuel. And not only is it just like a potato or rice, it also has some poisons in it, some alkalines. If you don't cook that properly, that poison gets right into your body. There's also some natural fruits, sapodilla, which is also a staple in certain countries, and it's quite delicious. It contains some poisons. And you never know it, and you eat it. And after a while, this will lead to chronic long-term inflammation. Okay, Mediterranean diet. Let's touch on that. Lots of pasta. Pasta is also bad for you. It just so happens that diet also contains a lot of flavonoids. So, and that will lead us to the next chapter.
Okay, well, no, thank you. I just wanted to really open that up for discussion, because there is a huge big link there. And so for people to understand, when we start talking about the effects of inflammation and the potential symptoms thereof, which you've already spoken to, which then leads me into what can we do about it. So we are talking about flavonoids, and I'm just wanting to now ask you if you wouldn't mind explaining what are flavonoids. I know we've had this topic before, but how beneficial are flavonoids specifically for the symptoms of inflammation?
What can you do about it? You can eat less processed fruits and vegetables because they contain less sugar and lots of flavonoids. Less sugar, lots of flavonoids. So fruit, 500 years ago, fruit was a lot of flavonoids, very little sugar. Now they contain lots of sugar, very little flavonoids. So that does lead us into what in the world are flavonoids. Flavonoids are the colored parts of fruits and vegetables. Flavone actually does not mean flavor. It sounds like the English word for flavor, but it's not. It's a Latin word for color. Flav means color in Latin. And so we call these the colored bodies. Oid means a body. So they were looking at a microscope a long time ago, and they said, wow, there's a lot of these little colored things floating around here. They're colored bodies, and they called them flavonoids. They didn't know what they were good for, but they at least named them colored bodies. So now we're talking about flavonoids because we know what they are. What are they? Well, we're all composed out of molecules, natural molecules. We're made out of molecules. And a molecule is the smallest thing you can reduce down to the smallest part of some compound. And it maintains its identity. Like Well, like water. Water is an atom of oxygen, and it has two hydrogen atoms on it. So we got an atom of oxygen and two atoms of hydrogen on it, and that's H2O. That's what we call it, H2O. And you can have a lot of water, and you get rid of all the individual water pieces, and the smallest piece of water you can have is a single molecule, and it has two hydrogens and one oxygen, H2O. I think everybody has heard that, H2O. Technically, it's called dihydroxide, but we say water, H2O. And this on a flavonoid, if you reduce it down to its smallest part, it actually comes up with it's a ring of carbon atoms, a ring, 5 rings, and it has off of each of those carbons, it has an OH, an oxygen and hydrogen atom. So I'm not going to go any deeper than that. And we call this a phenolic ring. It's a nice little ring, and it's got a bunch of OHs over it. So we take 2 of those and put them together. Because it's more than one, we call it polyphenol or polyphenolic. So you've heard that. I mean, I've said that before. Polyphenolic. So flavonoids are a polyphenolic. They are these 2 little rings of carbon with a bunch of these OHs sticking around it. The simplest one is like quercetin, and it's a bunch of carbons, and it has a bunch of these OHs around it. It's 2 of them, so we call it polyphenolic. So polyphenolic is what flavonoids are. Flavonoids are made up of these 2. Now, what is the difference between different flavonoids? It's all about how many of those oxygen and hydrogens are around that molecule. That's as simple as that. Some of them have 6, some of them have 5, some of them have 4, some have 3. And this is a difference between things like myricetin, quercetin that you've heard about. They're all polyphenolics because they have 2 rings together, phenolics because phenolic is the round thing, polyphenolic. So you might have heard bioflavonoids. It's the same thing as flavonoid. It just means bio, came from biology, bioflavonoid, or polyflavonoid, or polyphenolic. This is all talking about flavonoids. And different ones have different colors. Green, purple, red, you name it. There's every color, yellow. These are all caused by these polyphenolics, these flavonoids. And because they have different hydrogens and oxygens, they reflect color differently and they show up as colorful. So where are they? So now you know chemically what they are. Well, where are they? They're in the peel usually. Most often they're in a peel. Let's look at an apple. It's red on the outside, it's white on the inside. There's no flavonoids inside the apple. It's all in the peel. Now, in an orange, it's very similar. You cut open an orange and it looks orange, but actually that color is on the little individual orange sacs. You've seen those vacuoles. You've taken an orange apart and see these little things here that look like seeds and stuff, and they look like they're full of liquid. Well, on the edges of that, again, like the outside, are these polyphenolics. Cucumbers on the edge, polyphenolic. Now, sometimes a product could be green or yellow all the way through, like yellow squash, like bell pepper. Then the polyphenolics and some of those are all the way through. But when you cut something open, like a potato, purple potato, good for you. But if you don't eat the peel, it's not any more good for you than just a plain old white potato. Sweet potato, you cut it, it's orange all the way through. Hey, that's a good one. That's why I recommend you eat that, because it's got polyphenolics, it's got flavonoids all the way through it. So I say, hey, eat the colored vegetables. Lettuce and stuff, it's green all the way through. That's great for you. Celery, it's great for you. But most of this stuff is on the outside. Peaches, cherries, most of it's on the outside. Some cherries are also red or purple inside also. Those are great for you. So I always say, hey, eat the dark berries. Eat those dark berries, dark red grapes. Eat those rather than the green grapes. If you take the peel off a green grape, it just looks like a little white eyeball. All the polyphenolics are on that outside. They're in the peel. Guys, if you can help it, don't peel your fruits and vegetables. Eat the whole thing if you can stand it. Hey, I'd even tell you to eat the orange peel if you could, but I mean, most people don't do that, except there are some that you can eat, like a kumquat. You eat the whole peel. They're great for you. Kumquat is excellent for you. So eat the dark berries. If you're wanting to get flavonoids, eat the dark berries, eat the darker things, avoid the white things. White, look at the rice. White, look at
Is it just me? I think we might have lost him, I think, didn't we? Oh, no, he's back. You're now on mute, Dr. Ahrens. Dr. Ahrens, you're on mute.
I'm unmuted. So here,
there you go.
so eat the dark things, eat the dark berries, the dark vegetables, the dark green. Not only, by the way, do they have the most flavonoids, but they also have most of the vitamins. They're in that same part, in the peel, as an example. So eat those dark things. Eat if you can get a hold of it, eat the brown rice rather than the white rice. Eat the colored potatoes, eat the sweet potatoes. Those are the things that are good for you. So we've told you what is inflammation. We told you why you need inflammation. We told you that you don't want chronic inflammation. We've told you what polyphenolics are, what flavonoids are. Now we need to get into, well, how do they work? Why are they so good? Well, the number one reason is they help manage inflammation. Polyphenolics, it's their flavonoids. Their number one job in your body is to manage that inflammation, to get you out of that chronic inflammation. They're like a general that comes in and tells your body how to tackle the wound that you have. It tells your body when to attack the poison or the cut, and when to stop and when to go home, and to get you out of that chronic inflammation. Now, of course, that's assuming that you've stopped taking that poison, you've stopped taking that refined sugar, you've tried to breathe good air, and you've eliminated this constant bombardment on your body. But it's very difficult to do, particularly with refined sugars, to cut that off. It's very difficult to do that in this modern age, and you're going to continue to have those attacks and insults to your body. You need flavonoids because they manage that inflammation. They keep it from becoming chronic. And now I'll tie it all together. Let's look at an example of, as we said, sugar. Sugar is a natural compound. We need it to survive. We need glucose to survive. Sucrose is table sugar, comes out of sugarcane. It's 50% fructose and it's 50% glucose. We need those chemicals in our body to survive, but they always in nature come along with flavonoids. Think about that. The sweetness in an apple, the sweetness in an orange, the sugar in there, even the sugar in sugarcane, they always come with flavonoids. There's no plant on the earth that has sugar in it that does not also provide flavonoids, because flavonoids are there by nature to regulate that sugar and to prevent you going into chronic inflammation. You know, at one time or another, I did call these things sugar chaperones because they help your body manage sugar and keep your body from going into chronic inflammation. But what we have now in today's diet is sugar without flavonoids. Sugar without flavonoids. Man, that's a disaster for your body. You're getting that energy, you're getting that pure sugar. Your body thinks, wow, there's something weird about this food, and it goes into chronic inflammation. It perceives that sugar as a poison. You go into inflammation and it never stops as long as you're eating that stuff. You need to eat something with flavonoids. It sounds simple, doesn't it? Take sugar, have flavonoids with it. Unfortunately, again, in today's day today, 2022, or even several hundred years ago, not until we look at like 1,000 years ago, did we have food that had sugar and flavonoids in it. We've bred it out. They're gone. Wow, if you could look at a grape from 1,000 years ago and a grape today, totally different. 100 times more flavonoids and a tenth of the sugar. Now we've got 10 times more sugar and 1% flavonoids. You can't get it in the foods that you can even buy in a health food store. And we call this because you're not getting enough flavonoids, and then your body goes into inflammation. We're calling that flavonoid deficiency syndrome. Now, this is so important that we contacted the US FDA and we said, look, don't you see that these flavonoids are just like a vitamin? They should be classified as a vitamin because they're essential to life. And unfortunately, the rules have changed since the mid-90s that we're not going to be able to discover new vitamins. I mean, that's just, most countries have made it a law. If you find a vitamin now, you got to declare it to be a drug or supplement. So that's how most flavonoids now are sold, just as supplements. And we don't claim that they cure anything, but I'll guarantee you take enough flavonoids, you will reverse a lot of your health issues. If you do have that inflammation of your joints, arthritis, and you take enough flavonoids, in many cases, you can reverse that situation, not because that you took anything that healed you, it's because your body needs flavonoids to respond appropriately to an insult, to a wound, or to a poison. It needs those flavonoids because those flavonoids, they regulate all of those processes in your body, that wound response, that poison response. They are necessary to regulate those other molecules. They actually, in your bloodstream, they're floating around free. They actually attach to some of those other good molecules and they activate them to work properly. Without that, they don't function properly. They don't work properly. They're still there. It takes a whole lot more of them, though, to help you. So if you, for instance, were to break a bone, and it takes normally, 2, 3, 4 months to heal a broken bone, if you had the proper amount of flavonoids in your body, you'd heal yourself in half the time. It's not because the flavonoids healed anything. No, it's because your body needs those flavonoids in order to operate properly.
So, Dr. Ahrens, you're talking about short-term, like we're talking about acute short-term inflammation when you're talking about broken bones. And then, of course, we lost him again, I think. So I'll wait till he comes back. Because I know there was a question there that Riel had put in there, which I think that Dr. Ahrens was about to answer that for you, was the question that Riel had was looking at timeframes of curing inflammation. So whether it be acute being short term, which is what you were just talking about, Dr. Ahrens, in regards to a 4-month period for a broken bone, but we can help speed up that process if you had essential flavonoids that we need, as opposed to chronic long-term inflammation. Is there a time frame on that? Because that was one of the questions, and I've got one other question that has been asked that I wanted to ask you. So with chronic long-term, is there any sort of time frame on that to be able to support the body to heal itself?
Well, it's just like having enough vitamin C in your body, actually. You need vitamin C every single day because vitamin C is one of those compounds that helps regulate your body's response to different things. And also vitamin C is necessary for even your gums to operate properly. Another one is vitamin D. Vitamin D helps your body absorb calcium. And so you can't say, oh, I'm going to have vitamin D on these 3 days, or you need vitamin D, all the vitamins in every single day for the rest of your life, of course, just like you need water every day to live. That's how you have to think about it. It's not, oh, I got a headache, so I'm going to drink a glass of water and maybe the headache will go away. That's nonsense. You need water every single day. And you might, if you're getting a headache, you might say, whoa, I am dehydrated. I need to drink more water for a while. That's how it is right there.
Mm-hmm.
You need flavonoids in your diet every single day, every meal, 24 hours a day, the rest of your life. But when you do have some issue like a broken bone or whatever, you probably need more of it to help you out. But you need it every single day. It's not like I'm going to take it this for 2 months and to get through a period. You need a lot of it. If your body is responding to a wound or a broken bone or arthritis or whatever, you probably should supply an extra amount to make sure you have enough so that your bloodstream is saturated and you have enough in your bloodstream. But if you're totally healthy, then you just need a little bit. Just have it in kind of reserve, enough to take care of an issue, and that might be enough for anybody. But if you have an issue, you need to take a lot. So I will tell you a really good example. During this pandemic, I know I'm exposed. I travel all the time. I just got back from a trip 4 hours ago, jammed in with people in the airplane, airports, hotels and all that stuff. And we know there's a lot of issues here. There's viruses going around, they're spreading. And so I think, okay, my body, I want to prepare it. I want to get ahead of the game. So entirely during this pandemic, I've taken quite a bit of flavonoids. I've doubled or tripled the amount I normally take every day. And when I'm not in this situation, when the pandemic goes away, then I'm just going to take a little bit. So what I think that would support me every day unless there's an emergency. And okay, what kind of flavonoids should you take? Man, first of all, eat all those dark fruits and vegetables. So, well, I don't like vegetables, or I don't like fruit. I'm sorry. What if you didn't like water? You would take water. You got to have it. You need those. Come on, you're mature adults. You need these foods. I tell people, hey, just go down and get, you can buy citrus flavonoids. I even sell that in health food. That's a great thing. Just get those. You need more flavonoids. And I would tell people, eat more fruits and vegetables.
Dr. Ahrens, I've got another question so we can try and fit this into today's call, because I think Kathy's actually asked that if somebody is taking like an immune suppressant, so I envision that for any type of medication, this may be the case, but in this particular instance, example like prednisone, can flavonoids still help the body to support it to heal itself?
Well, most of the flavonoids that I have studied have no drug interactions. If you're taking some other type of drug, there's not anything you've got to worry about. Yes, sometimes we need to suppress our immune system because it's ready to attack, like a tissue graft or something, or a heart transplant. You want to suppress your immune system, but you still need flavonoids. You wouldn't say, all right, I just had a heart transplant, so I'm not going to take vitamin C. That wouldn't make any sense, because flavonoids just don't regulate only the immune system. Just like any other vitamin, they have several functions. One of them is, I just explained, it helps with carbohydrate. It helps with sugar metabolism. It helps your arteries be flexible to be able to pass oxygen in and out. I don't want people to get stuck on that. Yeah, we talk about immune system and inflammation because those are really key topics. But there are dozens of things that vitamin C do, vitamin A, D, E, K, all of the vitamins. They don't just have one function. Likewise, flavonoids don't have just one function. So you don't want to just cut them off from your body just because your immune system is being suppressed. I will also say, if you had a heart transplant, flavonoids help in establishing the wound and the connection. They help in the wound healing process. It's not just the inflammation part. And when they do work on the immune system, and if they do it properly, they still manage it. Even if you have your immune system suppressed, you need all the other things that flavonoids do for you.
So, Dr. Ahrens, just to try and wrap up today's call, because we've been on here and I know I've learned an awful lot again, and it's reignited information that I may have had hidden in the library of knowledge, our brain. It's been hiding. So I've refound it just by listening to what you've been sharing with us, because I've written some things down here. You know, we talk about itis. It can be arthritis, bronchitis, bursitis, colitis, diverticulitis, gastrointestinalitis, osteoarthritis, pancreatitis. The list just goes on with the itis. So we really addressed what inflammation is. We've looked at flavonoids and the benefits. What are they? And the benefits of them. No claims here, but for quite a few years now from using flavonoids and the benefits of them, I've seen so many things, as you have, where people's lives have changed because their body has had that support through the flavonoids, which has made a huge difference to be able to address inflammatory levels. Not curing anything, not healing anything. The conditions are still there, but it's just the support and the assistance that the body is getting through constantly, daily providing yourself with these essential flavonoids that we need, and that your body does actually respond to it when you constantly keep on nurturing it. I think that's like having a garden. You keep watering it because you want it to grow, you want it to flourish, nourish. Our bodies are the same. So I want to thank you, Dr. Ahrens. Is there anything that you'd like to finish up on today's call before we go?
Yeah, there was a time that people thought vitamins were silly. How in the world could a little chemical in your body help you? How does vitamin A help your eyesight? We didn't know. The first discovered vitamin was vitamin C, because back when the English Navy went out on these long trips and they just ate salted pork and salted beef, and they tried to get fresh water. They had almost no fruits and vegetables, and their teeth started falling out. And so there was a doctor that said something's wrong here, and he started just changing their diets. And eventually he found out that he fed these sailors limes, their teeth wouldn't fall out anymore. And so that's how the English got the Navy guys got the nickname as being limeys, because they always had limes on board, and everybody laughed at them worldwide. Well, they were also the most healthy, and it's one of the reasons that they were successful. But everybody laughed about it. But here's the proof about that. You talk about carrots, and they got vitamin. There are lots of vitamin, particularly vitamin A, and we now know that vitamin A is essential for your eyesight. It helps regulate all those processes. And the proof of that is, have you ever seen a rabbit with eyeglasses?
I have to. I'm not quite sure. I'm pleased I stayed on mute, because I could have said so much to that. But what I do want to, and having a very bad twisted sense of humor because I live in the land of down under, I will say nothing for once. But what I will say from this, Dr. Ahrens, is what I'm getting, and the message comes through so simply and clear, because we're all grown adults and we all know why we put this together today, because we wanted you to understand what inflammation was. We wanted you to understand that it is important to have it in acute stages of being able to heal the body more quickly. It's the chronic inflammation that we really need to address, but flavonoids are essential. And if one thing that I've gathered from this today that is very, very evident, we need to fuel our body with food as our body's medicine. Our food is not what it used to be. Now, whether that be through environmental, through what the ground is that our food is being grown in, is not as good a quality as what it was 100 years ago. We simply can't get what we need from our food. And this is where these flavonoids are essential to actually put into your body on a daily basis to support it and assist it to heal itself. So what's the old saying? We are what we eat. So start looking at what sort of fuel that you're putting into that Maserati, or how you're putting in the work into that best piece of real estate that you have, because if you don't, you're going to get concrete cancer and all these sorts of things. Your body's going to age, it's going to fall to bits. Invest in your health before your health invests all of your time. So Dr. Ahrens, I want to thank you so much. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us today. I've really loved today's call. I hope that you have got something out of it and you share it with others, because I think it's got a very, very clear message here. And I thank each and every one of you. We look forward to seeing you next week. So thank you so much, Dr. Ahrens, and bye for now.
Bye-bye. Bye.